Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
In our previous video, we looked at what Arsenal did in possession to secure a dominant win versus Spurs. But Spurs still look dangerous, so in this video, we'll focus on what they did on the ball and how Arsenal looked defensively. And a lot of you have been asking what software I use for my analysis, and it's called Once Video Analyzer Pro. And it's already pretty affordable, but I've teamed up with them to give any of you who want to try it a further 10% off by using the code FMS10. So visit their website through the link in the description below if you're interested. Arsenal were looking to press much higher up than Spurs were, so Spurs had to find a way to play short when they needed to, and they had an interesting way of doing this. Romero and Longley would drop into the box to provide options for Lloris, but Dyer, rather than becoming a third option in a deeper region somewhere, would move into the midfield, defensive midfield to be specific, whilst Højbjerg and Betancourt would then split wider so that it looked like a 4-3-3. And Jesus would often be ready to press the goalkeeper, and Dyer's positioning actually often served to tie up Odegaard, whereas if he hadn't done this, we might have seen him as a second presser or deeper to be more secure. And at times we could see Xhaka and Partey backing this up, whilst the role of Saka and Martinelli was to press from out to in onto the wider centre-back. So this shape and utilisation of Dyer did create opportunities for Spurs. Firstly, they could look to draw in the winger first and then find their wing back. And the fullbacks were pretty aggressive in looking to cover this, and some teams would then look to shift across to a back three. But rather than doing this, Arteta instead opted to have Partey from defensive midfield when the ball was on the right come across to cover where possible, to allow the defenders to stay in their natural positions. But more interestingly, would often see Son and Richarlison, or Richarlison could rotate with Kane in these times, move into the midfield, so that both pivots couldn't easily cover Spurs' own pivots. So what would usually happen is that Partey would remain deeper, so there was the opportunity for a chip ball into Son. But this positioning could also make Arsenal more passive, and we could see their pivots instead remaining deeper to cover these men, and this would then create the opportunity to find the pivot instead. So here we see the positioning of the three centre-backs with Dyer defensive midfield, whilst the other two are supporting Lloris. The positioning of Dyer in these moments could be dangerous at times if there was a quick turnover. As for example here, there's a poor goal kick, so Dyer is still out of position when Arsenal look to counter-attack, meaning there's a potential gap in the defence to be exploited. But again here, we see that Dyer is now a part of the midfield, meaning that whilst Odegaard can cover one man, Xhaka has to cover the second. So when the ball is chipped across, we can see that Kane and Son had moved into the midfield, and Son has space to receive, and has actually drawn the centre-back out of position as he looks to prevent him getting onto the ball. And now drawing Partey, Son can look to find Kane. But if the Arsenal pivots were now more passive, we can see that while Saka is still looking to cover Perisic, Højbjerg has a little bit more space, because Partey is covering Son who's dropping in. So he's able to receive and turn, and play Son in on the inside of Ben White, leading to a more dangerous situation. And even in open play, we at times saw similar tactics from Conte. And perhaps because he was so worried about being overloaded in the midfield, Dyer functioned as the third man. And with these man-to-man situations, there could be potential for creating passing lanes, because Spurs' narrower front three would be able to drop in at times and receive the ball off of the midfield. Alternatively, when the remaining centre-backs had the ball, Martinelli was often aggressive in pressing from out to in to try and make this a 2 versus 2 situation. So Spurs could at times look for Emerson either directly or by first going through the midfield. But Dyer is not the best on the ball to be playing as a single pivot, so he wasn't really effective, and in the second half, Conte shifted him back to a more traditional position. But another way this could create an advantage for Spurs is that it could allow them to have a similar shape as Arsenal did in their attack, a 2-3-5, and with the midfields now matching up, it would mean that they had a 5 versus 4 advantage in the front line, which often causes the opposition defence to defend much more narrowly. So when Spurs were able to shift the ball to one side, this would then allow Spurs to work a switch to the far side, either to Emerson or to Perisic to then have a run towards the box. But in general, controlled play, Spurs did struggle to create for themselves. In fact, one of the ways they created the most danger was on the transition. With Spurs sitting so deep, the Arsenal backline would often move fairly high up the pitch. And if Spurs were able to win the ball, and more crucially break this first line of pressure, they could get into extremely dangerous positions. This could be through a man carrying the ball past that first line, or the ball being played into Kane, who could hold it up. And in this phase, Son, Richarlison, as well as both of the wingbacks, were highly aggressive in then pushing up and looking to overload the remaining Arsenal defenders. So we can see that Arsenal have just lost the ball, and their three behind their attackers are not as structured as they usually are, so Son is able to carry the ball. He breaks that first line by finding Kane, and Kane is then able to return the ball to Son in space. So now that midfield three of Arsenal's has been well and truly broken, and this creates a 2 versus 1 in this scenario. And in fact, running this on, it eventually leads to the penalty. Overall, Conte's Spurs were unable to build up play in their desired manner for most of the game, meaning Arsenal outplayed them. Tactically, Arteta gets a 9 and Conte a 5. But what did you think of this match? Drop it down below.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out.